In this video, I'm going to show you the exact n8n nodes and components you need to learn to master over 90% of n8n. The reality is that if you understand and use these 21 nodes and 7 main categories of components, you'll be able to build anything you want, from simple workflows to entire applications. If you don't know me, my name is Rene. I'm the founder of Wingrowth, an operations and AI automation firm. And for the past 3 years, I've been building and implementing AI automation systems for over 100 clients. I've also taught hundreds of entrepreneurs about operations, automations, and AI in the past few years. All right, let's get right into it. Okay, so the first step in any n8n workflow that you're going to be creating is triggers. To start any workflow, you need a trigger. Here, when it comes to triggers, the most simple one that you're going to use to do a lot of testing is the manual trigger one. Okay, so this works here if I just select it real quick. Whenever you're going to create an execute here, it's simply going to use this trigger node and execute. One important thing to mention right here is when you have a trigger, you can always use on n8n the pencil icon in here to put some data, predetermined data if you want to do some testing. Okay, I'm going to show this a little bit later in the video. Another of the trigger that you're going to use for practical production workflow is the schedule trigger. So this here is when you want to have a workflow operates into an interval of times. You could say, for example, I want this trigger to start every 4 hours, and then simply put the, you would click save and then simply put the workflow into active mode. And then every 4 hours, your server would ping n8n and this workflow would trigger essentially, okay? This is very useful when you want to scrape materials online, for example, at set intervals of time. One thing to understand with this trigger node is this is based on your local time, so your server location, okay? If your server is in Los Angeles, for example, and then you live in Montreal, so West Coast, East Coast, then what you need to understand is that the schedule trigger is going to happen on the Los Angeles time zone because your server is located in Los Angeles, for example. So super important to understand this, because when it comes to production workflow with clients from across the world, if you want to make sure that you start something at the right time, you need to understand this small concept. The third trigger that we have is something that you're also going to be using quite often, especially when it comes to having employees or external people fill a form. And like the name says, it's a form. Okay, so this works in terms of, it's a form of webhook. I'm going to explain webhook just after. But basically the form here, if I just say, I'm going to put a random title here, so test form. Okay, let me add an element here, first name. So that's going to be in the form. We could also say we want last name, whatever information that you want. For the purpose of testing, we're going to test the URL and we're going to copy this right here. Whenever I click submit this, so this could be the n8n form or any other form like type form or table form, smarted form. Basically, this is going to send the information right into the n8n workflow that you have. Okay, and then this is going to continue. You're going to have access to all the information on the right here. A little bit difficult to demonstrate here because I have plenty of nodes that are not connected. So this is going to throw an error every time I try to start it. But you'll understand this quite easily if you play with it. The other trigger that's, in my opinion, the most important one are webhooks, okay? Webhooks are basically URLs like this. So you have a test URL and you have a production URL. Whenever you're going to do tests, use the test URL, and the only difference is that this one has webhook test in the URL right here, and this one has no test, okay? But this one, when you activate the workflow, whenever you call this URL, this is going to send the information. For the test URL to work, you're going to need to basically, let me put this on the trigger from webhook. Whenever you click execute workflow, this is going to wait. If I didn't have the nodes right below, this is going to wait for a piece of information receiving from another server. So what is a webhook? A webhook is a way for you to connect to software without using the API, okay? So basically some software, I'm going to take SmartLead, for example, which is a platform to send emails. Whenever there's an event happening in SmartLead, so for example, you receive a new email from a contact, Smart lead is going to send you a ping, hey, something happened based on the webhook you created. And then this ping is going to be received inside n8n, okay? And the way you connect both together is that you take this URL right here. So either the test if you're doing tests, or the production one if you're production ready. And you take this URL, you copy it, and then you put it into Smart Lead, where there's this webhook components, okay? One thing to note is you have different methods of having webhooks, because this works like a traditional API call. You have the delete, the get, the add, patch, post, put. Most of the time, and I mean most of the time, so like 95% of the time, you're gonna either get a get webhook or a post webhook. What's gonna tell you what you need to be using is the documentation on the other software. So I know from experience on Smart Lead, this is gonna be a post webhook, okay? So I would put post, it's super important that you put it, because if you don't, then it's not gonna work. The path here is simply a way for you to name your different URLs. Okay, so by default, there's one path that's linked in there. That's plenty of names. But if I wanted to call this email receive, then I could do that. What it's going to do is just change the webhook URL to this with email receive. For me, so I can organize this better in my systems, okay? Super important. I do have a video about this, about webhooks. So if you want more information on this and how you get production ready workflows, I invite you to go watch this video. That's gonna pop on the screen. But basically, authentication is also something you're gonna need to go through if you do production workflows for security reasons, okay? So authentication is just a way for you to say that not everyone has access to this URL to send that into your n8n workflow, only you, and then there's different ways of doing this. So webhooks are something that I use often to get instant event happenings from a software to my n8n. So it does event in Smart Lead, boom, n8n workflow, okay? Something like that could be new email receive, send it inside n8n, look at what type of email it is, craft a response, and automatically respond, for example, okay? Then you have different kind of triggers, okay? There's like subcategories of trigger, because on n8n, you might have noticed that you have a bunch of applications like, you know, Outlook, YouTube, whatever. You have a bunch of applications. Not all of them are native though. And when you don't find the one that you're looking for, especially when it comes to an instant trigger, this is when you're going to be using webhooks. Here, for example, we have a Gmail trigger node. Okay, this is something that a lot of people use. What I want you to understand is there's three types of triggers when it comes to application. Okay, some of them are instant. So as soon as something happens in the software, something else is going to happen into your n8n workflow. Some of them happens X amount of time, and that's pretty much it. Okay, those are the two important variations of it. For example, Gmail here is a good example of something that happens every X amount of minute, hour, day, or whatever. So this is like a schedule node in some ways, okay? So this is not going to be instant unless you do, well, every second is not there. Sometimes it's there, but just be aware if you do every second, this puts some load into your server. You have every minute, every hour, every day. So this is going to look at your emails. This is similar to a schedule trigger. Polling triggers. Webhook triggers are similar to what I explained here. It's just that the nodes are native. So Stripe is a good example of that. As soon as someone made a payment, Stripe is going to send you a webhook inside your application. It's just that it's easier for you to connect because you can go on Stripe, you connect your credential, and then boom, it's done. Less stuff to make because it's native. Then there's a third type of trigger, not relevant for you to understand how this works. It's like a webhook, but it's not. It's called a streaming API. So it's an API that listens for events and send you an instant ping whenever something happens. It's like a webhook. A good example of a software that's a streaming API is Telegram, okay? So just understand the triggers, and then you're gonna understand how to start any workflows that you might wanna have, okay? Some important notes for you to play with and understand and master if you want to be good at n8n is the data transformation node. Because really any workflow in n8n or any other software for automation is just about getting some data, transforming the data, and then doing something with it, okay? And to do this, n8n, those nodes are the most important ones. So I'm going to demonstrate here with a workflow I've created, and for this I'm going to use the manual trigger. So let me just put this on manual right here, boom. Okay, and I'm going to execute the workflow, and let me explain what happens. Set node is a way for you to put information into specific formats. Okay, so sometimes you get information from an API, and then you want to make sure that the variables are set. Okay, so this is text variable, this is an array, this is a numerical variable, and you want to make sure they're easy to get back later in the flow. Then you use a set variables. In this instance, I have hard-coded some information. So this is an array of a real estate object with different real estate pieces, okay, to demonstrate all the different functionalities. But this is an array. The output looks like something like this. We have an array of real estate pieces, okay? Then you're gonna see we have real estate pieces from USA, Canada, and France, okay? The split out, this is for you a way to basically split an array. So here in this real estate array, we have 5 different pieces, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I put it field to split out, what this is going to output is 5 items of all the real estate pieces like this, okay? So this is a way for you to iterate over more complex arrays and just have every bundle separately so you can do data transformation, okay? So as you can see, this split out 5 items. Then we have the switch node. A switch node is basically for you a way to route the different piece of information, okay? And you can have a lot of different paths. Here, I've demonstrated this by basically putting, okay, I want a path if the country is USA and I want a path if the country is Canada. Okay, so what this is gonna do is basically send 2 items into the USA path and 2 items into the Canadian path. And we have one that's France, and obviously it's not an option, so this is not going to output it. So this is a way for us to filter it out, in essence, okay? Here, when it comes to the merge is super useful when it comes to merging different paths together. So very simple here. Let's say I went from 5 items, now I have 4, 2 USA, 2 Canada, and I want to merge them again together. Then I'm going to say, okay, merge all the different inputs. So this is one line merge, and then here, I merge everything together, and now we're left with another array that has only 4 items, so 2 USA and 2 Canada, okay? Here in the switch, by the way, you could go here and you can add as many routing values as you want. So I could say if country here is equal to Mexico, but then, and I'm gonna rename the output, but then if I name it Mexico, it doesn't matter, because even if I'm going to rerun it, even if I rerun it, there's nothing that's called Mexico, but there's one that's called France though, okay? So yeah, this is how switch work. Merge, again, super useful sometimes to compare data from different API calls and like put them together and then transform the data later on. Then we have aggregate, okay? So here, quick example, I had an array with 4 objects, and then I'm going to aggregate this into another array, okay? An array is to put different mini items together into one array. Here, the data transformation did not do much. Basically, what I did was just to put this array into another array that's called validated real estate, okay? So the output looks like this. We have validated real estate, and then all the different pieces together right here into one big array. Then we have if. Okay, so now there's a distinctions between 3 nodes and n8n that you need to make: the switch, if, and filter. I'm going to explain filter a little bit later, but they kind of do like the same thing, but not the same way, and you should be using them in different instances, okay? Switch is when you have different paths together that you want to filter things for, and you can have a lot. If is basically a true or false. If something exists, for example, then continue. If not, then do nothing, okay? Here, the if statement is just to check, okay, is there a validated real estate array? Does it exist? Yes or no. If it doesn't exist, then I'm not gonna do anything. I stop the workflow there. But if it exists, it goes to true, and then it continues, okay? It's super simple, but it's a yes or no. Okay, and the condition in the middle, if you go inside, can be anything. You can have many condition with and or. This is just conditional. Okay, so you need to learn how to work with conditions in a sense with string, numbers, Boolean, array, object, and datetime. Okay, but this is not super complex stuff, but very important. Then we have a code node. So the code node and n is a superpower. You absolutely need to learn how to use code nodes because sometimes one code nodes allow you to remove 10 different data transformation nodes. Okay, if you don't know how to code, it's not a big deal because now we have AI. Okay, so use something like Claude AI, ChatGPT, and then just explains what's the input. So what kind of input you receive here. If you go JSON, you can copy this JSON here, send it inside Claude, and say what you want to do as data transformation, and say output a code in JavaScript, a pattern that does X or Y. Okay. One important thing I want to mention, as of the time of making this video, so we're the 23rd of October 2025. I use Python because on the cloud version of n8n, there are some bugs with the JavaScript version, funny enough, because JavaScript is the native one, where sometimes the code node is just going to spin infinitely in JavaScript. And Python, I never had this issue, so I just use Python. And to be honest, Python is easier to read as well for me. So yeah, here I have a very simple script. What it does is, as a data transformation example, is it takes the array we have USA, Canada, Canada, and then it creates two different arrays based on countries. So we have validated real estate, and then we have an array with the USA real estate piece and the Canada real estate pieces. Okay, so two different items. Okay, this is just for the purpose of this demonstration. Then what I did just to show that those were two different items was just to split them out again. So as you can see, we have now two items. One is USA, and then one is Canada. Then here, I'm going to demonstrate the filter by plugging this here. I could say, hey, I only want to keep Canada. So if country equals Canada, then I want to keep and continue the workflow. So what this is going to do is only keep one item. So the filter is just something super simple that just says yes, no, continue. Okay. There's no need for a false line or anything. It's just like something that filters. Okay, it's like a mesh. Here we can see we kept the Canada one, and then we discarded the USA. Okay, so super simple as well. I use filter whenever I just want to make sure that a certain topic goes through, and I do not care about transforming the rest of the data. Okay, here, if I cared about transforming the USA data, then I would have a if false or switch, and then I would do two different lanes. Limit is also super important, most especially for your testing purposes. Okay, when you have to do API calls, and sometimes you're gonna have hundreds of items. If you just want to test one and not do like 100 calls, then you can put a limit. So this is gonna take your 100 bundles and just output one. Just choose the first one. Okay, or you can decide which one, first or last. So here I have, again, I have two items right here, and I'm going to put a limit of 1. And what this is going to do is I said keep the first one. So this is going to keep USA, and only USA is going to continue. So if I had further things to do in terms of data transformation, then this is where I could put it. Okay. Then we have the loop. The loop is something that is super useful whenever you scrape information. And when you have many bundles, you need to do the same action on and then do something else. Okay, I'm going to show you an example, real tangible example of how I use the loop here. So we had this workflow where we have 12 months of data. So we have a start date and the end date. So that's 12 items. And I need to basically, there's 12 items in between 1 and 2 here in the picture. And basically for every item, I need to do an API call with the start date, extract the data, modify the data, and then keep it in some memory for further use. Okay. So here, the loop over items basically loops over everything that comes from the number 1 here. Then it goes into this HTTP request, which is an API call to QuickBook. If you're curious about what I'm talking about, this is a workflow I've done for accounting firms, and it's the last video. This one's going to be posted. It's going to be the last video you're going to see with accounting with AI, so you can go and see if you're interested. So we get the data from the specific month, then we extract all the expense, then we check for error handling. If there's an error, true. If not, then continue. We do this 12 times because there's 12 months. And at the end of the workflow and done here, we have aggregate. An aggregate is just taking those 12 items and putting them into one big array again of expenses formatted, okay? And then the 7th node here is basically just data transformation. We continue our usual workflow with 12 months of data. So this is a classic problem you'll be having whenever you do workflows that have different items. You might not know what I'm talking about right now, but whenever you're gonna scrape data with HTTP requests and you're gonna need to do some pagination, this is how it works. So you can come back to this and see how's the workflow, how is it working, okay? So you always have the loop, and then you have an aggregate to get back all the data together, or a code node, whatever you want. Essential nodes, there's 2 that I put in there. The wait, so wait is going to be something, it's super simple. Let me take the trigger here. Sometimes you need to wait for an HTTP request to finish. Let's say you were processing a video and then it takes 30 seconds, but then you need the video to do the next step. Then you would have a wait node here that would just say wait for 30 seconds, okay? I'm going to put 5 seconds here just for the test. And then I'm going to say, okay, execute the workflow. And then the workflow is going to wait, okay? And that's it. That's really all there is. Super important, because sometimes you're going to have some bottlenecks with different APIs, different softwares, and you will need to put a wait, otherwise the workflow will fail. So keep that in mind. The other workflow you need this for production-ready workflow is an error trigger. So whenever there's an error in any of your workflow, you need to be sending yourself some notification, okay? And you need to be logging those. So super important thing. The way you do this, if I go in here, whenever you need to put your workflow active, and whenever you do this, you can go into the settings here, and you're gonna have here in the workflow, you need to do this for every workflow manually. You're gonna have error workflow to notify when this one errors, and then you can select which actual n8n workflow it is, okay? So for me, I have an error tag, and this basically logs the error inside Google Sheet or SmartSuite, and then it sends a notification on Slack, and then I know there's something that happened. I recommend actually that you have a different n8n workflow. You just have a trigger node right here. If I just start the trigger node, this is going to give you some example data that you can use to build your workflow. And basically just name it and then call this error specific workflow for all your workflow. And that's pretty much it, okay? It's not very super complex to use, but it's something, seriously, if you do work for clients, you need this. You cannot not have this, because otherwise you're going to have errors at some point and you're not going to be notified, and then you just won't ever be noticed when there's something, okay? So make sure you have this. We get into the essential for integrations. So those are the concepts that take the most time to learn, I think, because, HTTP request is a way for you to do API calls. It's like the same things as a webhook we saw earlier. We have delete, get, add, option, patch, post, put. The thing that you need to learn about APIs. And by the way, my partner Rob made a video about HTTP request nodes on n8n. The video is going to be in the description, and also it's going to pop on the screen right now. If you want to learn more about this, because this is probably the most difficult node to learn if you're not a technical person, I recommend you go watch, okay? But essentially an API is something that modern software have that gives you access to the tool without being on the tool, doing stuff manually, okay? Software are going to have API documentation. So if I go into, let's say, SmartSuite API documentation, you can always Google like this. And then I go into the documents. There's always going to be information like this. So let me go right here, boom. And this gives you the format of how you should do your API calls. This video is not going to teach you how to do that. I'm just saying this is one of the most important ones that you need to learn. But you should totally learn how to read the API documentation, okay? Very simple. I have an example here. This is like a URL. I'm going to do a get. A get is for when you want to get information from the internet, from the software. A post is when you want to put your information, so post your information on the software. delete is delete. The documentation of any software is going to tell you exactly what you need to be using. Okay, here I have a simple URL that gives me a sample of a blog post. So if I click execute, I do a request to this URL and it outputs me this data. Okay, usually you're going to connect your different software together and that's going to work. Here, I'm going to show you as well a tangible example of webhook, because you have webhooks that connects different software together, and you have respond to webhook. So a webhook is when you're receiving information, and respond to webhook is when you're sending back a response to the initial software. Okay. Sometimes you're going to need to send a response to a specific software that says, yeah, you received the information and everything is good. And if you don't do that, it's going to error out. So pay attention to the documentation. Again, super important. I have an example workflow here, the one that I showed. Basically, this is connected to my Smart Suite. So if I go in Smart Suite, I have my content stuff right here. And then into the automation here, whenever I create a new video, what it does is it sends an HTTP request, so an API call, to my webhook right here. Well, actually, it's this one. And then after that, I create a folder in Google Drive, and then I respond to the webhook with the new Google Drive folder link. So then my automation and Smart Suite receives this link and then apply the link inside my video. So if I go right here, you're gonna see there's a link asset. Okay, so basically new video, go on n8n, create a folder, and then gives back the folder links and back to Smart Suite. Smart Suite puts the URL here. This is how it works. Super important mechanism. That's probably how you're gonna be connecting most of the software that you're working with. Storage nodes. So I'm not going to demonstrate how to use this, but storage is an important component of any system. Okay, there's native storage now in n8n and external storage. Native one are the tables. So this is a new feature that just came out like a couple of weeks ago on n8n, and this lets you build table inside n8n and get back the information. Normally, what you would do before this update is use things like Google Sheets, Airtable, Smart Suite, Supabase. All of those are databases. So they let you store information that you can reuse later. Okay. Smart Suite is a good example of a database. So those are all videos, and this is a database of video. And whenever I want to interact with them, I have to query this database. Okay. You need to understand the concept of database to understand how to do applications or workflows. Okay, so pay attention to this and then use a couple one and familiarize yourself. But at the end of the day, storage is just a component, and it's a component you're going to use a lot. So familiarize yourself with how storage works, databases. As a bonus, we have the AI integration on n8n, because it's probably one of the biggest reasons why you're using n8n is to use some AI into your different workflows. I do want to mention, using those AI nodes, you have the basic LLM chain, which I use a lot. You have the message model. So this is like a native OpenAI node. There's really no reason to use that one if you use the basic chain. I don't use this because I change a lot the different AI nodes that I'm using, so the different providers. So here I have, for example, Claude, Gemini, then OpenAI. If I use this, then I'm bound to OpenAI. I don't want that. I'm building workflows for the possibilities of scaling them, and then at some point, maybe another AI is better to do something. Okay, so I don't necessarily use the OpenAI block node. I use a basic LLM chain, which lets you select a model like this. So you can use Gemini, Claude, OpenAI, whatever. So here, basically, I'm chain connected to OpenAI. It's basically the same thing as this, okay? There's the AI agent node, which interacts differently because it has a presets of basically instructions. So the AI agent node, even though you might have the same prompt, is not going to give you the same data as the basic LLM chain, and they don't have the same purpose, okay? I'm going to explain this a little bit further in the video. Then you have, just as an example, because you have things like summarize, nodes, extractor. I use information extracting a lot. It's very useful, and it's one of the main reasons why you use AI for workflows, okay? If I just demonstrate this right here, I'm going to connect it to, this is GPT 4.1 mini. Extracting is super simple. You have a text, whatever, and then you have the different components that you want to extract. I can add new ones. Here I just said company name, and then I'm going to run this. It's basically, no, let me put this, yeah. Okay, I have Wingrowth is a company that works in operations and automation, and then I want to extract a company name, and then the output, company name, okay? Super good, super useful, especially if you do things like invoice extracting workflows. It's going to be super good for you to use that. Then you have the basic LM chain. I'm going to connect it to ChatGPT again. There's something I want you to understand here. Those are the basics, but there's more. But I want you to understand the basics. You have system prompts and you have user prompts. System prompts basically sets the role, the behavior, and the constraint for the AI. It helps you define how the AI should respond. The AI treats this as the instructions from the developer, so the railguards, safeguards that you have, stays consistent across the conversation, and this has a higher priority than a user prompt. The user prompt is contain the actual questions or the information from the user. Define what you want the AI to do. The AI treats this as the request to fulfill, and this changes with each interactions, basically, okay? When you want instructions that don't change in a node, you put this in system prompt. When you want something that change, like a text, then it's a user prompt. You can go in there, and if you click add prompt, you can put system user AI. I put the system prompt, and here's an example. You're a friendly customer support agent, always be polite, blah, 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 blah. And then here I'm going to say, where's my order? So depending on how I set up my system prompt, this is basically going to answer, okay? This is a very simple example, but this is how I always do my AI. Everything that never change is in the system prompt. You need to understand this, by the way. Then let's go into the AI agent. This one is a little bit complex, a little bit more complex. Basically, AI agents interacts differently. An AI agent is a tool, very simply, and not everything needs to be an AI agent. An AI agent is a tool that is made to take decisions based on the input of data, and then based on the decisions it takes, it uses different tools, get back the data, and take another decision. So maybe it's an output, maybe it uses another tool, and so it takes a chain of decisions based on the data that it receives. If you only need to extract the company name of something, don't use an AI agent, okay? This doesn't make sense. I'm going to demonstrate here the AI agent. Again, there's a user prompt and system prompt. There's a memory component. So if you have a chat with your AI agent, it remembers what you guys talked about, so it can be faster. Then there's different tools. I could connect way more than just one, but here this tool is connected to a database of 1,000 records in Smart2. And then the chat model we're going to use, and I'm going to plug this to OpenRouter because I wanted to demonstrate. OpenRouter is a node that lets you select different AI APIs just with one node. So it's like nicer to use. And sometimes in a sense, because you just need to modify this here, you get access to a bunch of different models rather than just always changing the node here. But it does the same purpose. If I click operate this, you're going to see the AI agent takes my question. My question was how many records there's in the database. Checks in the memory if we talked about this. Goes to the AI. AI agent goes into the tool now to understand and query everything. And then thinks about the output. And output, there are 1,000 records in the database. This can have many, many layers of questioning. There's really, like, you can have a lot of tools, but when you build AI agent, generally the more simpler, the better. If you have like 100 tools connected to it, it's not going to work. There's always going to be some things that mess up, okay? But I'm going to do another video about AI agents so that you can learn the best practice for it. This is not the purpose of this video right here. What's very important for you is to understand the memory component, how the tools interact, which basically this was an API call. So if you remember, this uses a tool. And memory component, so this is a Postgres, so it's like it is storage in some ways, okay? And this Postgres table is in fact inside a Supabase database, okay? Now those might just be concepts for you, but this video should point you into what you need to learn. If you learn this, you're going to be well set to understand everything about n8n and how to do no code in general, and you're going to be able to build anything from simple workflows to full-blown applications. Okay, if you found this video informative, please like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'm always curious to hear about what you guys think about those videos. And if you want to learn more, I have my free school group with over 2,000 members now, in which we post videos like this and we help people. The link is going to be in the description. See you next week.